Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, and welcome to the Vaishnava Voices podcast. My name is Sitapati Das.
And my name is Dana Devi.
Vaishnava Voices podcast is coming to you from a small rural town in the North Island of New Zealand, where we live on a lifestyle block of 5 acres with 4 cows, 24 chickens, and 2 cats. We also have a daughter, 15, who lives with us, and our son, 21, is starting his adult life in Australia.
Lucky for some. You may be wondering where I'm from. I am from Peru. At home, we speak Spanish, and it's exciting to speak my own language.
I learned to speak Spanish in 2001 to 2004 when I lived in Lima, Peru, doing service in the BBT and in ISKCON temples. The Vaishnava Voices podcast is created inside a commitment to the possibility of connecting Vaishnavas from around the world, sharing knowledge, information, perspective, and wisdom, and transforming the conversational environment that we live in.
Life is real, and let's share what's happening in our world. And let's make life exciting, because it doesn't need to be boring.
We'd love to have you come on the show to share your experience, perspective, knowledge, and wisdom. So reach out and start a conversation with us. Feel free to do it anytime. And enjoy today's episode.
Looking forward to talk to you.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Ram.
Swami B.V. Tripurari. Swagatam Vande. Welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to see both of you.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. You dropped another banger, another dance floor hit, Circle of Friends. I'd like to begin, though, by asking you this question. Swami B.V. Tripurari, you've inherited your father's title, Bhakti-Vedanta. Can you tell us, how did that happen?
Yes, I can. Prabhupada gave me the name Tripurari and Tripurari Das, and he gave me the name Tripurari Swami also when he gave me the sannyasa initiation in 1975 in Vrindavan. After his departure from the world in 1977, actually I was with Prabhupada at that, just prior to his departure, and massaging his feet when he was asked if there was anyone we could consult with after his passing. And he said, for philosophy, my godbrother would be our Sridhar Maharaj of Navadvip. So after the passing of Prabhupada, there was some interaction between Prabhupada's disciples and Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj of the Navadvip. And eventually, I came under his shelter. I found in him the kind of spiritual character, persona, insight, depth of realization that I found in Prabhupada. Although the two were different personalities, they were, so to speak, two leaves from the same tree. And Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj was known in the Gauḍīya Math for being an expert in Sanskrit and for making, I guess what Prabhupada referred to as titular adjustments when he spoke, Prabhupada that is, or wrote about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's desire to change the name or adjust the sannyas that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had received from Keshava Bharati, given that he felt that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a very high-class sannyasi and the Bharati name wasn't as high-class, I guess it was thought at the time, in the Shankara Sampradaya as Tirtha or Saraswati. So Prabhupada said Sarvabhauma wanted me to make a titular adjustment, if you will. It's a long story, of course, it follows that. But Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj was known for that type of thing, among many other things of much more consequence and substance. At any rate, some of my godbrothers who came under his shelter desired to take sannyas from him, and he gave some of them sannyas, and when he gave them sannyas, he changed their names. He gave them a 2 or 3 syllable name that somewhat characterized them, which was followed by one of the 108 sannyas names that were established by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I think he drew them from a book that he referred to, maybe Ananta Samhita. So the system in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's mission was, when he gave sannyas, he would give the title Bhakti and a 2 or 3 syllable name like Sridhar, Swami, no, not Swami, Sridhar, Ashram, no, not Ashram, those are sannyas names, Swami, Goswami, Ashram, but a 2 syllable name like Sridhar, or like Abhay, for example. So Sridhar Maharaj's name, for example, was Bhakti, not Sridhar. Forgive me. That's a sannyas name also. There's a 2 or 3 syllable word for his name is Rakshak. So Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. There could be a Bhakti Vedanta Sridhar Maharaj. There could be a Bhakti Pramod Sridhar Maharaj. So the second name, following the title of Bhakti, differentiated that particular sannyasin from another sannyasin who had the same sannyas name, be it Sridhar, be it Swami, be it Goswami, be it Siddhanta, Tirtha, Ashram, the 108 names and so forth. So excuse me for the long explanation, but the devotees, the disciples of Prabhupada who received sannyas from him, they really liked those flashy names, if you will, titles. There's some substance to them as well, of course, but they liked the titles. And when I came under the shelter of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, some of those godbrothers of mine said, "Oh, you should go and hear the mantra from Guru Maharaj, the sannyas mantra," because Prabhupada gave the mantra, sannyas mantra. He wrote it down on a piece of paper and gave it to us. He didn't say it in the ear. There's no substantial difference when a great soul confers upon you a name and a mantra. it goes beyond speaking, if you will, the well-wishing of him. But at any rate, it was an excuse for me to talk to Guru Maharaj, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, and I thought, okay, I can hear the mantra from him. No harm there. And so at that time, Sridhar Maharaj asked me, and name, you want me to change your name? I said, no, I'll keep the name Tripurari, because Prabhupada gives me the name and so forth. There was at least one other sannyasin at that time, Akshayananda Maharaj, who had asked Sridhar Maharaj to change his name also. And Sridhar Maharaj was a little reluctant to do so, but Akshayananda Maharaj said that, I'm working with some of your disciples, and in order that they have regard for me and listen to me, I want them to know that I have a connection with you. And if you could formalize it in some way and Sridhar Maharaj said, oh, you want me to change your name? And that was his excuse. And so Sridhar Maharaj gave him the name Bhakti Sagar Maharaj. If you study it carefully, he explained it means the same thing. So Sridhar Maharaj was just very kind, and he was just kind of working with our, dispositions and so forth in an effort to secure our faith in the Sampradaya and in our Guru Maharaj and so forth at a time where faith was struggling with the succession, with the departure of Prabhupada and so forth. They were trying and difficult times. And so with all of his spiritual wisdom and insight and full regard for our Guru Maharaj, for Prabhupada, he made that adjustment for Akshayananda Maharaj. But when he asked me, I didn't want to change my name. And he liked that also. But then shortly thereafter, we were on Parikram, and the system would be that you'd stop at a certain place in a holy dham, and the brahmachari, Chaitanya Saraswati Mata, who was leading the Parikram, would stop and ask one of the sannyasins to give a short speech at that place, right? And so we came to a place, sat down, I forget where it was actually, maybe the place of Prodamaya. And he said, and so he wanted me to speak, and he couldn't remember what was my bhakti 2-syllable, 3-syllable name, Tripurari, which he thought was a sannyas name. Well, Tripurari is not one of the 108 sannyas names. It's actually a name for Lord Shiva, who is Vaishnavana Shambhu. The Bhagavatam says he's the best of the Vaishnavas. Not that I am, but I'm named after him. But the brahmachari, I forget his name. He didn't know that, but he was wondering what he was struggling. And then one of the sannyasis in the group said Bhakti Vedanta, and so he said Bhakti Vedanta Tripurari Maharaj. So everybody cheered and celebrated, and so I accepted it from that day on. And of course, Prabhupada wanted that his disciples would carry that title and other titles as well. I think he outlined at one point some type of study program that he would like to have instituted, whereby his students who passed would be named Bhaktivedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, Bhakti something. So that's how I got the title Bhaktivedanta, and it's kind of I find it very charming how it came about naturally, very beautiful, and in the context of my kind of formal, if you will, chastity to Prabhupada in the midst of hearing from Guru Maharaj, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj.
Epic.
Thanks for asking that.
Yeah, Jai Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. Yeah. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada wanted that all his sons would inherit the family title.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. So I'm all right.
We've been reading your new book. We haven't finished it yet. I did jot down some kind of thoughts and questions, observations, and sort of launching points for further reflection from you about it. I mean, it's a silly question to ask, to say, are you in sakya-rasa? It's obviously a vibe for you.
Prabhupada was very I had an affinity for sakya-rasa, to say the least, and it was a common understanding amongst his disciples who thought about it that Prabhupada idealized sakya-rasa. I'm speaking in the early days of ISKCON, for practically speaking, the entire time that Prabhupada was present. That current was out and about, widespread, and it's not something that every devotee thought about. They didn't think about rasa for the most part at all. Prabhupada's commentary, or summary study, I should say, of Bhakti-yoga Sindhu was a book that devotees didn't know if they were reading it upside down or right side up for the most part. It was a confusing book to them. Rasa Tattva, all of the details, the names, the words, and so on and so forth. It was relishable nonetheless, but it was the hardest book for devotees to understand. Understandably, Rasa Tattva is a higher degree of focus and knowledge than the basic themes that we were more preoccupied with in our outreach, like reincarnation and the difference between Mayavad and Vaishnavism, and some moral emphasis, for example, on vegetarianism, no drugs, and so forth. These were themes. Not that they're not the only things we talked about or thought about by any measure, but for years we didn't have the Bhagavatam. We didn't even have Prabhupada's original Bhagavad Gita or the Chaitanya Charitamrita and so forth. They came out gradually. But lost the track of your question.
You were talking about the development of understanding of rasa in regards.
You asked about sakya-rasa. So, excuse me. Yes, forgive me. So, devotees weren't preoccupied with rasa tattva by any stretch of the imagination, but some of us were more thoughtful about that, or it was on our radar, so to speak. And but by and large, if you spoke with anybody about it, the consensus would be that Prabhupada is in sakya-rasa. And of course, Prabhupada wrote a famous poem when he crossed the ocean in the Atlantic. And in that poem, he expresses, he didn't write that poem for publication. It was a prayer to Lord Krishna, a personal prayer. And in the latter part of that, he expresses a longing to attain sakya-rasa. Tomara milane bhai abarase shukapai, gocharani guri din bho, korta bhani chutta chuti bhane kai lutuputi shedin, kobe habe more. It's very, very beautiful, very, very deep. And the longing that he expresses in that second half of the poem follows a very powerful submission, a emphasis on Sharanagati and doing the bidding of his Guru Maharaj and seeking in an effort to fulfill the ambitions of his Guru Maharaj for widespread of Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism, to get the power of Krishna to do so. So it's a very appropriate longing, following as it does an emphasis on Sharanagati. But that really stands out. And there are many, 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 many other examples. If you look, and I'm one of the persons, I suppose one of the few that looked into this in great detail and gathered all of the things that Prabhupada said about his personal internal affinity. And myself, along with Ashram Marsh, I wrote the book, published a book called Oh My Friend. Oh My Friend is a small little booklet that puts all of that together. What Prabhupada said about himself with regard to his inner life, which is the most conclusive pramana. Different persons may have different opinions, but I always went with his opinion, especially with regard to him speaking about himself, if you will. And to my surprise, and Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj had memorized that poem on the Jaladuta, which is central to the things that Prabhupada said. He said many, many things, but that's very central. Perhaps the most compelling evidence of his speaking about or writing about his inner life. Sridhar Maharaj had memorized the poem and just, in speaking with us, he cited it. And so that perked some interest, and he began to speak about it. And he was very strongly of the opinion that Prabhupada was situated in sakya-rasa, as was I, but that was very confirming. And he gave many evidences, and he drew from Prabhupada's life, which he knew very well. He lived with Prabhupada for 6 years in Prabhupada's apartment, and Prabhupada knew his family and everything. Excuse me, Sridhar Maharaj knew his family. They wrote their Bhagavad Gitas together at the same time, their commentaries. Prabhupada considered him like an older godbrother who had been very close, intimate with Bhaktisiddhanta in the mission while Prabhupada was outside. He learned, in Prabhupada's own words, many things from Sridhar Maharaj. And Sridhar Maharaj had great regard for Prabhupada and his campaign and so forth. So when Sridhar Maharaj began to speak about Prabhupada and sakya-rasa and gave comparisons to the campaign of Prabhupada and that of Nityananda Prabhu, and citing many things in Prabhupada's life and so forth, it was very compelling. And it's so much more confirmed for me my own sensibilities about Prabhupada's inner life. And very simply put, I follow Prabhupada externally, and I want to follow him internally. If there's another way to follow him, I want to follow him in that way too. So I think the stories about his external campaign, his wide-reaching campaign, are many, and they're all very compelling. And the anecdotes about his life, what he was like, personally, and his interactions and so forth, which we get from many devotees. There have been many memoirs published, but there's not really a word about his inner life except what it's kind of what I decided to publish. And based on things that I had heard from Sridhar Maharaj, and subsequently I would say that with the confirmation of Sridhar Maharaj about the inner life of Prabhupada, the confirmation for me that corresponded or confirmed my own inner sensibilities and attraction, if you will. I mean, Prabhupada gave me sannyas before Krishna and Balaram, when Krishna and Balaram were installed in Vrindavan, and my group of devotees who were raising funds through book selling, we did much to pay for the temple. In fact, when Prabhupada built the temple, he put it on the wall. This temple has been built by the contributions he named our book distribution party and 2 sannyasis, Guru Kripa Maharaj and Sodananda Maharaj, who were collecting in Australia. Wow. And I was the one that convinced them. They were collecting in Japan. I convinced them to go to Japan and collect for Prabhupada. That's another interesting story. So I had something to do, myself and a few devotees with me, with the building of the Krishna Balaram temple from afar. I wasn't there with all the struggles like Jamuna and others encountered in trying to build, a temple in Vrindavan for Prabhupada, but we were sending funds. And it was something that was very important to me because it was so important to Prabhupada. In fact, when the temple was going to open, it was going to open in Janmashtami of 1974. And I wanted to go, and I wanted to take my whole party of about 10, 15 brahmacharis. Ramaswar said, you can't leave book distribution. It's just sense gratification. This is the middle of, the summer. It's a big, I just couldn't relate to that. I said, I will go there and I will get bhakti samskars that I need in my life. This means much to Prabhupada. It so happened that the installation was postponed because the temple wasn't ready, and so it was in 1975, 6 months later, that it opened. And of course, that was a time during the festival when we would go. Prabhupada told me in 1973, I believe it was, every year you should travel and preach, and then come and spend 1 month with me in Vrindavan and Mayapur. So there we were in Vrindavan, and the temple was being installed, and it was then that Prabhupada gave me sannyas. And after he did that, Krishna and Balaram were very, very, very merciful to me. And I had I got the kind of samskar, bhakti samskar, kind of impressions I spoke about earlier. And with that, I should say, and then the confirmation from Sridhar Maharaj, it became clear to me that this was my ideal. So I pursue that, and And I've been a sannyasi for 50 years. So you would think that after that time, someone would have a little inclination as to what their inner life might be about. And I'm aware that many devotees were influenced by Prabhupada's own bhava, and that he represented a wave of that in modern times that was similar to the wave at the onstart of the sampradaya that was set in motion by Nityananda Prabhu. With the history of the sampradaya, which I cover in my book with regard to sakya-rasa, is rich, and it begins with Nityananda and his associates, the Dadas Gopals, who initiated widely throughout Bengal at the behest of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They formed many sakya-rasa lineages. It wasn't until after the passing of Nityananda Prabhu from the world, when Janava, his consort, went to Vrindavan, and the Goswami's books were just coming out, that the emphasis on Madhurya Rasa became prominent in Gauḍīya Sampradaya. These are the two real windows of opportunity that the Sampradaya offers us, in as much as it through those windows, there's a lot of help, if you will, through songs that have been written and commentaries, from that angle of vision. Comparatively, much has been written from the vantage point, from the bhava, if you will, of Madhurya Rasa, and little comparatively from that of sakya-rasa, although the current of it has been alive and well, as I document in my book, since the onset of the sampradaya, and a big wave of it reemerged, a tidal wave of it in the form of Prabhupada. That was, driving him internally, if you will. The idea to return, as he says in his prayer, to enter into the Leela with Krishna, herding cows and somersaulting, as he says, Chuta Chuti, Panikai Lutaputi, Say Deen Kobe more. When will that day be mine? That's my ideal, and I think many devotees are touched by that, and many of them came in touch with Prabhupada because of it, because of their past, and it's one of the reasons that I felt, I see there's an opportunity here. There's a hole, if you will, that needs to be filled with regard to the history of the sampradaya and the significance of sakya-rasa. It plays a secondary role, if you will. If you had a hero in a romantic drama and a heroine, and the hero had a best friend, he would be the best supporting actor.
Yes.
That's the role of Nityananda Prabhu. He's Balaram. In Krishna Leela, he can't directly participate in Krishna's romantic life. He's the older brother. Krishna's romantic life is underground, if you will, hidden, parakiya, paramour love. He can't overtly participate in that. And if he comes close, Radharani will become reverential towards the older brother, and the romantic atmosphere will be compromised. So he voluntarily stays out of the way. You might note, of course, that Balaram has the role of reporting to Mother Yasoda everything that Krishna does wrong, like eating dirt, which Krishna really objected to afterward. You told on me, how could you do that? But you may notice, this is my point, he doesn't turn him in for the parakiya that he knows about with his omniscience, Balaramji ki jai. So imagine how pent up he must be, not able to celebrate the romantic life of Radha and Krishna. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears to explore that whole love life from Radha's perspective, well, Balaram comes along with him. Nityananda Ram ki jai. And here he gets to directly participate in the romantic life of Krishna, who is now Gaur Krishna, in pursuit of that romantic life's experience from Radha's vantage point. It's very extraordinary. He gets to participate in that by boldly bringing everyone's attention to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what he's about. Therefore, Vrindavan Das Thakur said, Gopi Bhakti was brought to the world by Nityananda Prabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, but Nityananda Prabhu pointed everybody to him. Chudamar used to say that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, speak about Krishna, chant Krishna's name, give Krishna's teaching, Nityananda Prabhu said, no, speak about Gaur, give Gaur's teaching, chant Gaur's name, and so forth. So So Nityananda Prabhu has a very important role. The sakya-rasa, the point is, has a very important role in Gauḍīya Vaisṇavism. After all, sakya-rasa and madhurya-rasa, these are the only two rasas of breads that are compatible. Dasa-rasa is not compatible with madhurya-rasa. It's maybe neutral, but vatsalya-rasa is incompatible. That doesn't mean it's bad. It means that when sakya-rasa is present, then the romantic life, the parakiya life of Radha and Krishna would have to contract, right? In the presence of the elders, where this illicit, if you will, transcendentally illicit love is going on, that love has to contract in their presence, right? So but in the proximity of friendship, I mean, without, for example, Krishna's herding cow. It said Krishna's a cow herder. But his cow herding is only an excuse to be out roaming the forest with his friends, which is only an excuse so that he can depart at midday and meet with the gopis. And some of his friends go with him. And it's those particular friends, the Narmasakas, that my book has focused on, which has never been focused on before, even though the Narmasaka Bhav is a unique contribution of Rupa Goswami to the religious world. No one in the religious history or Indian history of aesthetics that Rupa Goswami drew from to present his Vedanta of aesthetics, if you will, no one has introduced this particular bhava. It's a form of sakya-rasa that's influenced by madhurya-rasa, that enables the friends of Krishna, certain friends of Krishna who have this bhava, to directly participate in his romantic life, and without whom his romantic rendezvous in pursuit of union with Radha would not be possible. Just like it wouldn't be possible without the handmaidens of Radha, also without these friends of Krishna, it would not be possible. So they play an important role. And Sakya-rasa, my point here, is very compatible with madhurya-rasa. The whole, from the Gaudiya point of view, the main thing is going on in the forest. Either in the midday or at midnight, and there's evidence for the Narmasaka's participation hardly in midday, and to some extent even at midnight. So one of the reasons, yes, I'm interested in this. I have this is my ideal. That's a fact. Let it be.
Wow.
This is my, and I think it's the ideal of many devotees, and they could use some tools to help them become acquainted with that. I mean, if you want, bhava is like a candle in the heart, a flame, and you have to be careful that it doesn't get blown out by the attention that may come to you, and cause you to be proud for pride to arise. That can blow out the candle. But what my book is about is putting the candle in your heart. Then you have to light it. You have to light it by applying yourself, from beginning to end. So it's a very heavy course on tattva, philosophy, and theology that underlies this ideal, the means to attain it from beginning, to end, if you will, to what you can write about. There's things that you can write about the means, and there are things that you can't write about the means because they just come about in the context of pursuing what's been written about the means. That means bhava, and then bhava has a way of just exercising itself, if you will. One is naturally drawn to particular leelas and so on and so forth, songs and whatnot. And so, yeah, it's my ideal, and it's the ideal of many, maybe less developed in many, but there's a good audience for that. And one evidence for this, if you will, that there's an appetite for this that needs some that a meal be served, is that some years ago, quite a few years ago, a godbrother of mine, Dasaraj Sutta, bless his heart, he found a book written by Nayanananda Thakur from the 18th century, Preo Bhakti Rasarnava, I think it's called. And it's about sakya-rasa. Now, it's about it doesn't focus on the narmasakas, those devotees, those friends of Krishna who offer a shoulder for him to cry on and sympathize with his romantic crisis, and also who also serve Radhika as his turn in her crisis. He focuses on the Priyasakas, the friends of Krishna, whose sakya-rasa is not influenced by any other rasa like Madhurya or Vatsalya or Dasya, of which constitute the four types of sakya-rasa revealed by Rupa Goswami. And his book is short. It refers to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and defers to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. His work is short with regard to theology and philosophy, and also Leela narrative, both Prakat Leela, the manifest Leela as described in the Bhagavatam, and the Aprakat Leela, which is sometimes described in books like the Nilamrita. It's very short. But my point is that it was very popular. It sold out a couple of times, and it's been translated now by two different authors, Dhatara Sutta early on, and Bhakti, doesn't have a Bhakti, I guess, Banuswami, and my godbrother in ISKCON did a translation of it also in more recent years. It's very popular. So there's an appetite for that, and I think there's more of an appetite for it than many realize. And so I thought, here's a service opportunity. This is my thought. There's a service opportunity. I know something about this. I've been pursuing it for years. So let me write something about it. I was a little shy to do it, to be honest with you. But some friends and disciples kind of encouraged me and nudged me to do so. I have to say, you asked me, is that my ideal? The book is I'm a little bit vulnerable in the book in places. So it's not an academic book, although it's written with considerable rigor and reference and so forth. But it's my feelings come out of the book, and my realizations, my insights, as we go through the different leelas, and also to look at the way and the philosophy that underlines it. So for the careful reader will pick up on something like that, and that's a good thing. Guya makati prichati. Sometimes devotees reveal their hearts, so they can't help it. So some of those things are there. So again, it's a little vulnerable. Your question about it brings that up. It's a long answer to it, but yeah. So again, and with the Priya Narmasaka, I thought nobody's written about this. Rupa Goswami, this is still his own contribution. The Priya Narmasakas, you can find them in all of the Leela Granthas. But what is their particular bhav? What is it about? How does it work? So the service opportunity was there, and I thought I should take it from a number of angles. A service opportunity, and I think that's important. If you want to write a book, that, enough hasn't been written about it, or you have some unique insight in it, something contribution to make, and quite honest with you, this book turned out to be somebody asked me, who did you write it for? And I said, I wrote it for the Sampradaya. It's a book that will be around for a long, long, long time, much longer than I'm going to live. And it's there for this not only this group of devotees who have an affinity for sakya-rasa. It would be extremely useful and helpful for them. But it's a very and some of my friends and learned devotees who have read it made this point that it's very much shows the harmony between the different rasas and sentiments. It's not a my rasa is better than yours, anything of the sort like that. It's really a window into the world of bhakti rasa from the angle of sakya-rasa that has so much regard, sakya-rasa, for Madhurya rasa, which has so much regard for sakya-rasa. You think Radharani's friends don't love Krishna's friends? Well, you should read the book, find out about that, and vice versa. So, what else?
Well, first of all, Maharaj, thank you for empowering my question. I said it was a silly question, when I posed it to you, and for two reasons that you address both of them. One is that it's an impolite question to ask. And, thank you for not taking umbrage at my asking it in such a bold fashion. And it's also a silly question to ask, because when one reads the book, and even listening to you speak now, that you read the poem written on the Jaladutta by your spiritual master, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and then in your commentary on that derived the, I would say, obvious conclusion of his inner life. So standing in 100 years from today, in 2124, when people are examining your life, that if someone was to say, gee, I wonder what rasa he was in, and then they see this book, which is like a seminal contribution to the Sampradaya, yeah, just by the following the logic of your how you understand the inner life of your spiritual master and applying that to yourself, the book speaks for itself. It literally speaks volumes. Yeah, thank you for your vulnerability and empowering my silly question.
If I may, just for a minute, say something else, and that is, obviously some devotees have posited that another idea about Prabhupada's inner life, Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj in particular did, and I think there were reasons for that, that he did that, and I spoke to him about it on 3 different occasions privately, and I heard from him things that I don't think others have heard or that he made spoke publicly. I think there were reasons for that, and I respect him for his reasons and why he pushed on that. He was very, of course, had a strong affinity for Madhurya Rasa, which is the prominent sentiment in Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism and par excellence, and he wanted his disciples to pursue that, and I understand it, but I think that, well, there was a lot of information, if you will, things that Prabhupada had said that he wasn't aware of, and he didn't want to hear it either, because he had a certain agenda that I don't fault him for in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not in competition with him or something like that. In fact, he told me that I have no objection to your opinion about Swami Maharaj being in sakya-rasa. So just for the record.
Yeah, I heard it from you in a class many years ago. A very charming way of understanding differences between devotees, as you spoke before, the incompatibility between Vatsalya Rasa and Madhurya Rasa. Mother Yashoda wants Krishna to stay at home in bed. The gopis want him to come out and play at night.
Yes.
And between sakya-rasa and Madhurya Rasa, as you have explained, there is this realm of compatibility and even synergy and harmony in the Rasa Leela.
Yes, it's true. Sakya-rasa, as we say, and as you're reiterating, is compatible with Madhurya Rasa, and highly so. In fact, I've written another small book that's not published yet called Sakya-Pranay, and in the introduction of that book, I've raised the point that that there's a case to be made for on a hierarchy moving from Shanta to Dasya to Vatsalya, then Sakya, and then Madhurya. Hierarchy, this is more for the material world, for sadhakas, I should say, but because in the spiritual life and in the Paravyom and the ultimate and amongst muktas, every rasa is the best for everybody. It's a subjective reality, but objectively we could say one affords more intimacy than another, but subjective is the ultimate, ruling on what's best. What's best for you is best. But Rupa Goswami in Bhakti-yoga Smriti Sindhu gives the hierarchy from Shanta to Dasya to Sakya to Vatsalya to Madhurya, because in Madhurya, in Vatsalya, there's this palana, there's this nourishing that goes on. The parents will nourish a child that's not there in friendship or in Dasya or in Shanta. But he, at the end of his writing, his chapter on sakya-rasa, Rupa Goswami says, but some devotees argue that because there is equality between Krishna and his friends within sakya-rasa that's not there in Shanta and Dasya. Therefore, Sakya is more desirable or higher, however you want to talk about it, than Vatsalya. He leaves it at that. But Jiva Goswami wrote later in his Bhakti Sandarbha, or in his Sandarbhas, in Priti Sandarbha, he clearly makes the case that he gives the hierarchy in the other way. He says it's Shanta, Dasya, Vatsalya, Sakya, Madhurya. And so, to make a simple argument here, yes, it's true that the nourishing feature of parental love is not present in fraternal love. There's something in fraternal love that's not present in parental love, and that is the secrets that friends keep from their parents. And especially amongst the Narmasakas, these secrets of Krishna's romantic life that they're careful to help hide from the elders, if you will. So there's a kind of intimacy in sakya-rasa that you won't find in Madhurya rasa. In fact, Jiva Goswami goes so far. Of course, Jiva Goswami worshipped Krishna and Balaram in his youth. Amongst all the Goswamis, the founding acharyas, no one more than Jiva Goswami can you find in his writings affinity for sakya-rasa he expresses. He's clearly in Manjari Bhav, but he has this affinity for Ram and Krishna and their friends that he expresses in Gopal Champu and the Sandarbhas, here and there, again and again. And it was notable to me, and I've written about it and underscored it in a couple of places in my book. But he goes so far as to say, and I've written a whole chapter about this, it's the last chapter of my book, that the Kanta means the bhava of Radha, the bhava of Chandravali, the lovers of Krishna, gopis, sakis. The Kanta bhav of Dwaraka is Mishra, mixed with Dasya. And the Kanta bhav of Braj is mixed with Sakya. Sakya, Mishra, Kanta bhava. Now, that's a big pill to swallow for many devotees. What does he mean by that? How is the Sakya, he's saying that the Braja Gopis' love for Krishna is mixed, Mishra, mixed with Madhurya, with Sakya bhav. So he's strong on that point. So anyway, the point is relative to what you've just said, reiterating Krishna, that Sakya-rasa and Madhurya rasa are very highly compatible. If you want to, there are mixtures, I should say, of Dasya and Vatsalya with Sakya. So when Dasya is mixed with Sakya, then we find this in some younger friends of Krishna. We find also some older friends of Krishna whose Sakya is mixed with Vatsalya. Rupa Goswami uses the word, my memory's not as good these days, Sankul. Sankul, it doesn't mean mixed per se, it means like bundling together. And he and Rupa Goswami both have explained that because Dasya and Vatsalya are not compatible with Sakya, those who have Sankul, a mixture of these two, the one of which is prominent is the rasa they have standing in, so sakya-rasa, but because it's bundled together with Vatsalya or Dasya, sometimes they experience the Dasya or the Vatsalya separately. But with Madhurya, Jiva Goswami gives this example, and he uses the word mishra, mixing together. So they're very highly compatible. This is a kind of elevated subject we're on at the moment. The whole topic is, but this within that more so. But yes, they're very compatible, and Madhurya is very much nourished by that supporting role that Sakya-rasa plays in the Leela. Even the Priyasaka Sridham, the principal, Priyasaka, it's not that he's not aware of Krishna's romantic life, And Rupa Goswami gives an example in Ujjwal Nilmani how he not in any way as prominently as the Priyanarma Sakas, but how he also supportive of his sister's love life with Krishna, despite the fact that she's apparently married to somebody else. So yeah, these are very compatible, and they've come to us in the form of Gaur, Nityananda Prabhu. These are the presiding deities of the whole Gauḍīya Sampradaya. So it's pretty hard to ignore Nityananda Prabhu's bhava. That's another thing, too, of course. With the current, of time, as Krishna says in the Gita, sometimes my teachings get obscured, right? Sometimes, by the influence of time, they need to be regenerated, or some new energy invested in them. I come to do that, or I empower somebody to do that, like he did, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I mentioned the time of the passing of Nityananda Prabhu, then Janava coming in touch with the writings of the Goswamis, and then the emphasis on Madhurya Rasa, and how sakya-rasa got obscured and pushed to the background. Well, over time, the sampradaya became a little less spiritually vital. And again, it's something Krishna says happens in the Gita. And with that, you could find persons who were originally in sakya-rasa lineages deciding that, one of the Dwadasta Gopals, intimate friends from Braj, who were associates of Nityananda Prabhu that began these sakya-rasa lineages, also had a manjari, swarup, which really doesn't make any sense from Rupa Goswami's rasa tattva point of view. And there's no, it's just a made-up thing. And therefore we have Madhurya Rasa here also, and they were selling Madhurya Rasa to get chapatis in their old age, if you will. These are the kind of thing that Bhaktivinoda, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur were concerned about addressing in the Sampradaya, among other things. But the extent to which it had lost its vitality, so sakya-rasa became a little obscured, but it's very very important or significant. It has played a big role in the Sampradaya. Bhaktivinoda Thakur acknowledged it. The two protagonists of his book Jaiva Dharma, one is in sakya-rasa, one is in Madhurya Rasa. He finds that possibility. So it should be brought out. Yes, and yes, the two are highly compatible, sakya-rasa and Madhurya Rasa.
And then when that current is lost, as Krishna says to Purasambandha Arjuna Pandava in the Gita, it is the reestablishment or the reawakening of the Guru Shishya Parampara that brings it back into manifest existence or visible. And that was the role of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I believe you stated in your book. This section here that you're talking about, this is actually where we're up to. It's page 29, page 30 in the book. The disappearance of Sakya-rasa after Lord Nityananda left, and then the passing of his consort Janava, and then it got merged together with Madhurya. As you're saying, they're selling Madhurya to get chapatis. It's like, this is the highest thing, so let's switch to this. The mashing together of the rasa basa of Sakya and Manjari Swarup, and this kind of like tattva, what is it called? It's a opposite anta.
Yeah. Well, I got into that because I had mentioned that Nityananda Prabhu and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, these are the presiding deities of the Sampradaya, the presiding deities of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vandeshi Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Swarito. This is one of the Namaskar verses of Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami. And Nityananda Prabhu is clearly Balaram. I mean, there's no doubt about it from Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's no hint of anything else. There's no doubt about it in Chaitanya Bhagavata of Vrindavan Das Thakur. But it got so bad in the Sampradaya that some people started to philosophize. Nityananda Prabhu is actually in Madhurya Rasa, and some people, in some quarters, even they made him as Radha. Nityananda is Radha. Prabhupada used to be furious about this. I was in Navadvip in Mayapur, when one sadhu came have darshan of Prabhupada, and he made the point that Nityananda is Radha, and Prabhupada flipped out. I mean, he was so upset at that fellow, this idea. So these, there are a whole lot of things like this in Bengal, especially. There are all kind of followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who are following the Goswamis, in their theology. That's another thing. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur certainly was. And so I've also written about that, cleared up, I think, the tattva of Balaram, and that includes also a whole chapter about Ananga Manjari, who has been identified in some circles with Janava, and that's a whole very interesting chapter that's important, very important. So there's several very, very important chapters about tattva, rasa tattva, with regard to, well, for example, what is the truth about Nityananda Prabhu with regard to rasa, and it's clearly that he is situated in sakya-rasa. So sometimes people say, where is there any sakya-rasa guru in Gauḍīya Sampradaya? But let's start with Nityananda Prabhu. That's a pretty big start, right? Yeah, you can't ignore that. And then I've traced it. You've read a little bit, apparently, the chapter about the history. So I've traced the current. In a broad sense, I've traced the current throughout, shown how it showed up over the centuries. And again, it was prominent in Prabhupada in his campaign. So reason for a book.
Yeah, I can't help but hear an echo of that Sakya Madhurya controversy, and what you described earlier about the differing conceptions of Srila Prabhupada. And I haven't gone too deeply into this, but it seemed to me that the most compelling argument or substantive argument about why Srila Prabhupada is in Manjari Bhava is because it's the highest, and so therefore it must be. Whereas the argument that you've presented seems to be much more well-reasoned, researched, and connected to Srila Prabhupada's actual characteristics and statements.
Yeah, well, you have a book, a famous book like Gaura Ganadesh Deepika or Vishwanath Chakravarti's book, similar to that. I forget the name of it, a century later.
Madhurya Kadambini?
No. He has a book that it's kind of a repeat of Gaura Ganadesh Deepika of Kavikarnapur. Who's who in Gaur Lila? Who in Gaur Lila? Who are the associates? What is the Krishna Lila Swarup of Gaur?
List the cast in the credits, starring so-and-so as so-and-so.
Yeah. Kavikarnapur wrote a famous book, Gaur Ganadesh Deepika. So shedding some light on the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who they are in Krishna Lila. Well, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a century later, wrote a similar book. Yeah, he's about, 90% says the same thing. In some places he differs. But in Kavikarnapur's book, he also cites the fact that there are different opinions. Some reason like this, I feel like this, some others say this. So there are places for different opinions, and they are spiritual conjectures, if you will, that should be supported by scripture, by reasoning, by historical evidence. But above and beyond any other form of pramana, if someone comes out and says, this is my ideal, I mean, it's hard to override that. And this is the case with Prabhupada. I mentioned he published a small book called Oh My Friend, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it's pretty comprehensive what Prabhupada said about his ideal for sakya-rasa. And many of the points that are raised at times, well, what about this? We sing Nikunjayuno Ratikele Siddhai, and we sing Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's song Gurvastakam. It's popular, and there it says, serving the gopis. And Prabhupada himself was asked about this song, and he said, that is Vishwanath's gurus. It was in Madhurya Rasa. It could be Sakya Rasa. I mean, why is he going to say that about that song? It's such one example. I mean, there are many, many things, well, a number of things that people bring up to make the point, and they're fine doing it. But you have to look and see, and I'm not here to argue with anybody, but if you want my opinion, I got one. It's well formed, it's well researched, it's well reasoned, and it's and for me, it's experiential also. So,
yeah, it brings to mind the meme of the Dos Equis guy, and a statement that I heard you make previously. I'm not here to argue with anyone about it, but if I was, I wrote a book about it.
yeah. I guess you could say that, you know, that it's possible also that Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Jivadharma says that the guru of two disciples, they began to see him in light of their own bhava, and they both had different bhavas. So I think that you could say, I can see Prabhupada in light of Madhurya Rasa if my bhava is actually developing, and it's not just some theoretical thing or something I just, you know, regurgitate because I've heard about it, and that's one thing. So if you're actually that spiritually advanced, and with regard to Madhurya Rasa, your guru is Prabhupada. There's a way that you may see him in that light. That doesn't change, however, the fact that he himself is situated in sakya-rasa. That's a subjective vision that may be shared with you. So there's a place for it, but I would qualify it in that way.
And as you talk about the non-priya sakhas,
let me give you an example of that just for a second.
Yeah, please.
In my country, in the United States, we have a president, right? Sometimes the president was formerly a governor of another state. Let's say the governor of California, where I live, becomes the president. Then as the president, he has to represent every state, unbiased, equally. That's the theory, right? Equally represent every state. But he's a Californian. Now his Californianism, it has to be put aside as Guru Tattva to be unbiased and nurture anyone from any state equally. So that one can, in this way, be seen differently by different devotees. Like the president can be seen by Georgians or Texans or, you know, this one or that one as our president. But at the same time, he has his own. He'll leave the guru business and go back to California, something like that. So,
yeah, great example.
Something like that.
Yeah, powerful example. The non-priya sakhas, they sound like the male or masculine equivalent of the manjaris. That they, as the manjaris support Radharani, these sakhas support Krishna in the Madhurya Leela.
Well, they support Krishna. They also support Radharani, but manjaris also support Krishna and Radharani. But they're closer in each case, in either case, with Radharani and Krishna, respectively. So the Priyanarma Sakhas, they're friends of Krishna, but they also have a group leader. Besides being a group leader or having a group leader in sakya-rasa, they have a group leader within Madhurya Rasa also. So they're on both sides. And yes, there is a comparison. The type of Madhurya Rasa that the manjaris experience is the same type of Madhurya Rasa that the Narmasakas are influenced by. We call that Tadbhav or Tadbhav, rather than Sambhog. So the manjaris, they have no interest in having a direct union, romantic union with Krishna. They want to serve Radha and bring her in touch, bring about her romantic union with Krishna, and they relish vicariously, if you will, her bhava. So that's the type of Madhurya Rasa that's prominent in our sampradaya. And that same type of Madhurya Rasa is the type that these Narmasakas are influenced by. In other words, they don't want to have a romantic relationship with Krishna either. They want to bring, they're sympathetic to Krishna's relationship with Radha, and they want to assist and so forth. And they'll risk their lives in the Leela for that. There is a similarity, but there's a difference also in that they're both influenced by the same type of Madhurya Rasa. But the difference is Then in the Manjari's case, it's sakshat, and in the or direct, because they're in Madhurya Rasa. Whereas in sakya-rasa, they're in a different rasa, so it's partial. It's partial. Because the influence of Madhurya Rasa in the bhava of the Saka is that it enhances the Sakya bhava. It doesn't turn into Madhurya Rasa, it enhances the Sakya bhava. So the Sakya bhava normally reaches up to, rag, but that's Sakya bhava that's influenced by Madhurya, the Priyanama Sakya bhava, it reaches up to Anurag and Mahabhav. Now within Manjari Bhav, it comes to Mahabhav, and there's some development within Mahabhav. So there's some slight differences there as well. But yes, you're right. There's a similarity. There's a similarity worth noting.
I love it. When the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu came out, I remember reading Srila Prabhupada said, read the second half and you won't understand any of it, but just it's there for you to know that it exists. And it's like, 50 years later, you've had 50 years to study it. So here's the next book where you can read it and have an idea that there's something that exists that is such a incomprehensible subject. There's one point that is starting to come out for me here that you put in there. You said that, I'll just find this quote here. While our focus in this book is to enter the circle of Krishna's friends in his eternal Vraj Leela, the path to the Sakya Prem runs through the Leela of Gora and Nityananda Ram as it expresses itself on earth in Sri Navadvip Dham. And the Radha and Krishna, Dui Dehadari, Eka Atma, in the form of Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahayanya, the two combined, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu next to each other. It really is what you're describing in that the midday Leela and the midnight Leela, and then the Gora Leela, it's all there.
Yeah, Gora Leela is very, 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 very special. I mean, we can argue if it's better than Krishna Leela. It's just an argument for feeling. But there are, the purpose of Gora Leela is to make up for the lacking in Krishna Leela. That's a fact. There's some lacking in Krishna Leela that from Krishna's point of view, therefore there's Gora Leela. And Nityananda Prabhu is taking advantage of that. So, yeah, Gora Leela is very special, and Gora Leela, it has its own, the apricot Gora Leela, very special. You have to read the book for that. And, yeah. The book is divided into different sections. You begin the book with 5 or 6 chapters on the tattva, the philosophy, the theology, the history of sakya-rasa, the means to attain sakya-rasa, the nature of the ideal as it's described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and practically, in the chapter on sakya-rasa as an ideal, the whole chapter is an extensive commentary on Rupa Goswami's chapter on sakya-rasa. So that's what I call the circumference, if you will, of the circle, the tattva, that separates what we're talking about when we talk about friendship from other things that are talked about as friendship that are outside of the circle of the tattva that underlies or encircles this ideal. And so then the second part of the book, if you will, is a retelling of the prakat leelas, the manifest leelas as they're recorded in the Bhagavatam, that are specifically focused on sakya-rasa. The Bhagavatam's 10th canto has 3 aesthetic centers. It has a Vatsalya rasa center, a sakya-rasa center, and a Madhurya rasa center, which could be called the center of the center. But chapters surrounding the Damodar Leela, before and after. This is the sakya-rasa center, and then the last part of the 11th chapter up through the Brahma Vimohan Leela, which covers three chapters, 12, 13, 14, then chapter 15, so forth, up to 18 or so. This is the sakya-rasa center. And Krishna becomes a calf herder at the end of his Kumar Leela, Seish Kumar, Seish, the end of his Kumar Leela. And then in the 15th chapter, that's Brahma Vimohan and so forth. Killing of Vatsasura and Bakasura, and then Brahma Vimohan Leela, killing of Vatsasura or Agasura. Then it comes to the Poganda, the Krishna's boyhood, where he becomes a cow herder, 15th chapter. So these are all, this is the sakya-rasa center, right? And then, of course, the 5 chapters of the Rasa Leela, this is the Madhurya Rasa center. And the Bhagavatam is just trying to invite readers into the aesthetic experience. It's not just telling the story. It's just this happened, that happened. You can find that in other Puranas, the Vishnu Purana, Harivamsa Purana, Padma Purana. But in the Bhagavatam, they're telling it with feeling and trying to convey, express the feeling and bring one in. So, and I've done that too with my writing. The writing is, I've been writing for, I don't know what it is, 30 or 40 years now about Krishna consciousness. And I started writing my own books because I couldn't get, at that time, Prabhupada's books to sell. ISKCON wouldn't sell them to me because I wasn't in ISKCON any longer. That's changed now, but I started writing and I created an audience, or I was able to help some people, I should say. So I guess I'm fairly good at writing and expressing myself, and to take these concepts in the Leela, for example, the second part of the book, the Prakat Leela, retelling this sakya-rasa center of the Bhagavatam, from entirely from that vantage point. One of the things I focused on was taking the commentaries, taking the text itself, and making it accessible, expressing the feeling that's inherent there, that if you don't know Sanskrit, number one, and number two, you're not only linguistically, but also culturally not attuned, which is pretty hard to be, 500 years later to when a book was written in a different language. It's hard to penetrate what's so beautiful about it, what's so charming about it, why people can put it down. I wanted to write about it in such a way that people would have a hard time putting it down. English-speaking people from a different culture, they could actually get a feeling for it. So, anyway, that's the second part. And then the third part of the book is about the Aprakat Leela. So looking at a typical day, a typical Sunday in Krishna's life in the Aprakat Leela, then I've written about it from the vantage point of the Narmasaka. And then the last, so we go from the circumference to the radius, the Prakat Leela, to the center, which is the Aprakat Leela, the goal to attain. And then there's an afterthought, which I've called the tangents of the book, where I reflect back on different points of tattva that have been raised in the book and given whole chapters to them, like Balaram tattva, Anangamanjari tattva, and so on and so forth. That's how the book's constructed. And it's interesting because I originally thought to name the book Friends Forever, but I struggled with the fact that it's got these different parts, and it seems so boring to say part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. I wanted some kind of poetic way of expressing it. And I thought, what can I divide in sections that won't, take it apart? And I had used the phrase circle of friends at times in the book, and it came to me a circle. And so I fashioned it after a circle in the book. I don't know if you can see the cover here. Maybe you read backwards. Does it read backwards to you, or can you?
Around the right way.
Yeah.
It's the right way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Circle of friends. So these are the friends of Krishna that are in the picture, obviously beneath the big banyan tree that's very central to sakya-rasa. And there's a circle around here too, which is drawn in here, which is the Gopal yantra. It's superimposed. So you have to see it to read. You have to read it. Get it to read. But yeah, circle of friends. So it's divided into those sections.
We have a couple of questions from the audience.
Good.
Just one reflection on what you're saying there. I don't know if you've ever cited this as supporting evidence for Srila Prabhupada's rasa, but perhaps it's telling that he left during the translation of the 14th chapter.
Yeah, sure.
Right to the end of the sakya-rasa, and then he's like, okay, that's me, I'm out.
Yeah, I've written about that in a book called Oh My Friend. I added that into the book after it was penned by Ashram Maharaj. Prabhupada left in Vrindavan with a desire to do parikaram around Govardhan Hill, and he was in the middle of the Brahma Vimohan Leela, and that within the Brahma Vimohan Leela, the 3 chapters, 12, 13, and 14. 12 and 13, of course, are the Leela narrative, and 14 is Brahma's prayers, reflecting back on the significance of what he just experienced in those 2 chapters. Experience that in the text caused Sukadeva Goswami to pass out, to experience pralaya. There's no place in the book that this happens. Krita Punya Punja, what is the position of these cowherd boys, their intimacy? Sukadeva passes out, reflecting upon that. He has to be brought back to external consciousness to continue the Bhagavatam. Some say he doesn't mention the name of Radha later on because he would have passed out, but here he did pass out. And then Brahma, of course, reflects back in the 14th chapter on the philosophical significance of what he just experienced. And it's interesting to note that in that chapter, the 14th chapter, there is narrative support. And this is the context is the Leela narrative, right? So that's where Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam is given its support. Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam. This is the statement in the third chapter of the first canto that Krishna is the fountainhead of all avatars, the avatari. But in the 14th chapter, Brahma's reflecting back. He saw that, right? He saw that so many Narayans were coming from Krishna. He saw it, so he speaks about it there. And if you, of course, Brahma also, you want to talk about sakya-rasa and the sampradaya. Well, in the second canto, 9th chapter, Brahma gets siksha from Krishna, and it's very clear. Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur both say he wanted a relationship and friendship with Krishna. So here he comes later on, Brahma. Krishna's bringing him to Braj to acquaint him with himself as the object of sakya-rasa. Because when he appeared to him in the second canto, he was like this, He was in Gopa Vesh, in the dress of a Gopa, but he was like giving Upanishadic wisdom, and so he got an impression for sakya-rasa, corresponding with his own inner reality. But in due course, Krishna brought him into Braj to acquaint him with his full form as a Gopa, and with the vessels of that love in the form of his friends and their anubhavs, and so forth, all these aspects, aesthetic, the bhavas that combine together that constitute the rasa itself, right? So, yes, it's an important chapter, that 14th chapter, and of course, Prabhupada left in the 13th chapter, but the 14th chapter, it's also evidence for a very important point: how instrumental sakya-rasa has been in this world in glorifying Krishna and Krishna's Gopi Bhav. Well, here, Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam, that's important. If you want to understand the Gopi Bhav, well, you have to understand Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam. But there are also, anyway, a number of instances, and I detailed them in the book, how sakya-rasa has played such an important role in the Gauḍīya Sampradaya of explaining Gopi Bhav. But that's a little bit of an aside relative to the comment, and I really appreciate it. Yes, I did write a little bit about that there, but you're right, it's true. Prabhupada left during the Brahma Vimohan Leela, and a central feature of that Brahma Vimohan Leela is, of course, the picnic lunch of Krishna. That's depicted on the cover of this book. And Prabhupada said more than once, I just want to go, on a picnic with Krishna and eat ladus with Madan Mangal, who himself is an Armasaka. Prabhupada said this, a number of times. And the picture on the wall that Prabhupada looked at from his bed, it's all about this. So that's where he left the world. Yes, he left the world. That's it. Krishna took him. It's very significant. I don't know how you can dismiss it. It's very significant. I think that, who was it that brought that up? Someone?
I brought that up.
You
No,
brought that up.
Yeah, I was just listening to what you were saying. Yeah, just it was right there.
Yeah, very good. Yes.
Here's a question from Stoker Krishna Das, aka Sergei Levyikin. He asks, what is the closest relationship with Krishna that we can ever aspire for? Serving Krishna from a distance, from behind layers of circles of his closest servants, or can we actually have a close personal relationship with Krishna?
Well, yes, you can have a close personal relationship with Krishna. But right now, for most devotees, Krishna is a theological person. He's a theological person. You can't talk to him. He doesn't talk back, right? And it's not advisable to go into some imaginary thing that God is talking to me, right? We kind of militate against that, if you will, and emphasize let the Shastras be your guiding light, and the Guru and so forth. But what the teaching is that if you want to have a personal relationship with Krishna, you must become a person. But I am a person, you may think. No, you're only a semblance of a person. You're only a shadow of a person. You're not a real person in your biological, physiological, complex. That's here today, and it will be gone by nightfall, right? It'll be gone tomorrow. It's not going to last. It's blowing in the wind. All we are is dust in the wind, right? In that sense. That's going to come and that's going to go. So therefore, remove the dust. Cheto darpana marjanam. The chitta is an inner organ of perception that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu compared to a mirror, and it has covered with dust, which are the impressions from the material world that are forcing us to act in different ways and so forth, and not even allowing our will to express itself practically. So we have to clean off the dust, which means we have to dissect really, or deconstruct this material personality, this ego, this ahankara. And only then will a real person come out. So only as much as you become a real person, will become real to you. That's the task. This is Vedanta. This is a little bit of science here. You have to deconstruct this material personality. And this is, how do you arrive at truth? Within the legal framework, we have to follow the facts. Wherever the facts take us, we have to separate ourselves from our feelings. I don't feel he could possibly have shot him. But what do the facts say, right? Or if you go to the political realm, it's also supposed to be, without partiality. Obviously it's compromised, but theoretically it's supposed to be non-partial. The judicial system is meant to be non-partial, just whatever the facts are, right? Science, whatever the facts are. We're supposed to separate ourselves from our feelings, and we only accept feelings that correspond with the facts, right? So this is what we're doing as sadhakas. We're separating ourselves from the feelings. I think, I feel, I wish it should be. And we're getting a worldview from the sacred text and scriptures that basically say that we're more than what meets the eye and the mind, and it's worth pursuing. And this physical and biological, psychological sense of self is limited. It's purposeful. It's useful. It's meaningful. And as much as we use it for bringing out our real self, if you will. So this is the task at hand, and it's this is the apprenticeship of sadhana bhakti. In a sadhana bhakti, you're an apprentice. When you attain Baba, you're a bhakta, in the full sense of the term. We're generous to say you're a kanishta adhikari. So you have some adhikar, but the more that we cleanse the heart, if you will, and our Atma and its prospect arise. The more you become a real person that's going to endure, whose feelings are trans-psychological, bhavas, or you're going to understand Krishna as a person. And how intimate of association with him can you have? Of course, the ideal of Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism is you can become a fast friend of Krishna, or you can become a handmaiden of Radha, who no one is more dear to her than those handmaidens. You couldn't get more intimate with Krishna. And that is what Gauḍīya Vaisṇavism is offering you.
Yeah.
You have to know that's what the ideal is, and that's how close you can get, and that's how close you're going to get if you understand everything else about it and you apply yourself accordingly. And that there's some work at hand here. You have to work. You have to make an effort to get grace. This is our effort. We make an effort to get grace. Make an effort to get grace. Act in such a way that God will want to see you. And if you act in Gauḍīya Vaisṇavism, God will want to see you in very close and intimate terms. That's the whole idea of Gauḍīya Vaisṇavism. Love and awe and reverence, that's not very attractive to us. So what is the closest relationship you can aspire for Krishna? I would say as a friend of Krishna or as a handmaiden of Radha. That's as close. And you see what works for you in that regard. Very close.
Yeah, I just heard an echo of the introduction to Bhagavad Gita by Srila Prabhupada, where he says one can be a devotee of the Lord in 5 different relationships, and he lists the 5 primary rasas. It's like right there in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. It's like, I only read the introduction to Bhagavad Gita and I got the highest ideal of Gauḍīya Vaisṇavism.
Very good.
Right in there. Stoka Krishna Prabhu asks, is the book available for Kindle?
The book will be available for Kindle soon, but we published it in hardback, and it's available from Darshan Press. And I think maybe some information will be published about that here. Darshanpress.com, DASHARN press.com. But it will also be available in paperback in many countries in the world through Amazon, and it will be available in Kindle form through Amazon. But we wanted to sell some hardback books because we had to pay for them before we put out the Kindle. So we're going to wait a little bit on that, but it will come. But I really do recommend this hardback edition. It's so beautiful. The way it's packaged is something about it too. It's not just the words, but the packaging, the artwork. It's incredible piece of both inform and substance. So it's not expensive. $19.99. I wanted to make it should be like a $35, $40 book, I would imagine, but I wanted to make it fairly inexpensive. So
yeah, Stoka Krishna is saying the shipping to Australia is like $60 to $80. Someone needs to get a box of them over there. We'll see if we can organize that.
Yeah, I might come over your way one of these days. I've got some friends over there that I've been talking to, both in New Zealand and yourselves as well, and in Australia. So I think I might make a trip. Yeah,
that would be amazing. You're always welcome, Maharaj.
Bring some books. Yeah. But I would recommend at least to get the softbound edition from Amazon, because then they'll print it in Australia and send it. There won't be any excessive printing charges, shipping charges from that.
Okay, here's a question from Ami Atmadas. Do you have time for another question, Maharaj?
I do. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Okay, great. Ami Atma Prabhu says, an argument presented by those who believe Srila Prabhupada is in Madhurya Rasa as a manjari is that how can he lead others towards this rasa if he is not in it himself? I think the governor and president argument was a good one there. But here's the second one. Connected with that argument is that he is an intimate servant of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who revealed his manjari form. Surely he is also serving him intimately in his swarup as he is in his sadhaka rupa.
Yeah, well, I think that your second question is there's a number of answers to the second question, but I've cited earlier Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Shaiva Dharma, where two disciples of the same guru had different, attained different rasas. So that there are a number of examples of this. Aside from that, regarding with your second question, or related to your first question, I read Prabhupada's poem on the Jaladuta that I mentioned to you, to Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj. And when I got to the section where Prabhupada was pining for sakya-rasa, he said, "Oh, sakya-rasa." He was very charmed by that. And then I said, "Maharaj, some devotees are saying that because Prabhupada is not in sakya-rasa, therefore, if you want Madhurya rasa, you have to go to a Madhurya rasa guru." That's your question, right, Amyatma? So Puri Maharaj said, "Baba, if your guru is in sakya-rasa and you think you have a problem, then you have a problem. He will make all arrangements." Yeah. So it's a bit of those arguments, they're interesting, but they're rather mundane in a way. And although you may argue them, and I've given answers, I could give more answers. You cannot use those arguments to refute what Prabhupada said about himself. I mean, that's the story. You may wonder, how could it be? And I can give you other answers to it from what I have given already, and I can give examples too. Let us. You take. Let's take Duki Krishnadas, as he was called, who became Shamananda. His guru was Hridaya Chaitanya, who was a disciple of Haridas Pandit, who was Subal in Krishna Lila. And he attained Manjari Bhav, but he never for a moment gave up his connection with Hridaya Chaitanya, or considered that Hridaya Chaitanya wasn't his guru. And his guru had a role in the Krishna Lila also. These friends of Krishna and these manjaris, they have relationships with one another in the Lila. Radharani, Rupa Goswami cites a beautiful verse in Ujjwal Nilamani, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, this is Rupa Manjari speaking to a friend. And the verse says, in short, what service is Subal not qualified for? My God, look at this. Krishna is falling in the arms and breast to chest with Radharani in private. And he's fanning them. And if she leaves, he goes and brings her back. Rupa Goswami says in his commentary that this is one gopi. Of course, as I said, Vishwanath says the gopis is Rupa Manjari trying to instill faith for and regard for Subal in another gopi's heart. So my point is, these boys and girls, if you will, as Prabhupada used to call us, but in Krishna Lila, they have different relationships with one another. So you may have a guru in sakya-rasa, and you may attain Manjari Bhav. Is it dependent upon what guru you have? Or is there another reason? According to Bhaktivinoda, there's another reason. Typically, because if you take this is the way Bhaktivinoda looked at things, and there's a lot of support for this. And I've written a very lengthy article about that recently. I haven't published yet, but if you take an acorn, all acorns are the same, but each acorn has its own blueprint. There's no acorn. Each acorn is made up of the same stuff. Each snowflake is made up of the same stuff. Each grain of sand is made up of the same stuff. But they're not entirely the same, otherwise they wouldn't be different. Two things can't be entirely the same and be different. So each of us is also different. Each oak tree is different. How its branches come out, its shape is all in the acorn. There's a blueprint in there. But when it gets water and when it gets sunshine and the right soil and so forth, then the whole tree comes out. And the one acorn will show itself in one way as a tree and another acorn in another way. So why we're attracted to one rasa or another? Are we just a blank sheet that, whoever, weighs in more heavily upon us and imprints something on us, then that becomes our personality. It's imprinted on us, but it's not us. Or are we inherently more meaningful than that? If we have no ananda, then Jiva Goswami itself says in the Sandarbhas, then life has no meaning. Ananda means love. This is the purpose. This is the purpose. Life is moving for that, for love. We exist for the purpose of serving Krishna. Jivera Surupoi, Krishna Nityadas. So, I could go on. This is a big topic, and I've looked at this from different sides and taken one side and the other over time, but I've come to this. It's, and this is Bhaktivinoda's position, and it became clear to me in recent years that this is a very central position to his whole philosophy, theology, his whole exposition of Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism. So the point I'm making is why you're attracted to one rasa rather than another. So
it's really bhakti inherent or inherited, and
it's both.
It's
both. It's inherent and it's bestowed. You can't get it unless it's bestowed. But what's being bestowed is more of the same, something like that, to bring it out. So this is the emphasis of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So and for good reason. It's supportable by very strongly by Baladev Vijayabhushan. The knowledge, for example, of the jiva. Some people say the jiva is only a substrate that that knowledge could be imprinted upon, and they could be knowledgeable thereby. It doesn't inherently have knowledge. But that's not the teaching of Baladev Vijayabhushan. He's a good person to understand Jiva Goswami through. He says what? He says that the knowledge is like the water in the ground. The knowledge, and it means knowledge of the jiva. The Gyan Swarup is the Ramanuja term, and he uses the term. We call it Sambandha Gyan. This Sambandha Gyan is inherent. Gyan Swarup it's inherent. Not only the knowledge of the self is inherent, but other knowledge as well. Dharma Bhuta Gyan. Dharma Bhuta. Anyway, he says, when you dig a well, right? It's not that the ground has a potential to have water. The ground has water. It doesn't have a potential to have water. It has water. And when you dig enough, it comes out. So knowledge that I'm a servant of Krishna and a particular type of Krishna, this is inherent in the jiva. And Baladev goes on and on about this in Vedanta Sutra, and the Sandarbhas can be understood in light of this as well. There's ananda in the jiva. It's very clear. The ananda of the jiva, what is it? It's the counter positive to suffering. The bliss and the knowledge, both. If there's ananda in the jiva, that means there's bhakti in the jiva. What is ananda? And ananda in Brahman is unmanifest. The Swarup Shakti is unmanifest in Brahman. Well, it's there, it's just not manifest.
I guess at best you got the absence of suffering in Brahman. The suffering is unmanifest as well.
Swami argues, the Dvaitins say that Brahman is just the counter opposite of suffering. Jiva Goswami says, well, the counter opposite of suffering is bliss, not just absence of suffering, it's bliss. So anyway, it's a long argument, but the argument of Bhaktivinoda and really of our Sampradaya is that each of us are the same. but each of us is also different, and we're all made of the same stuff, but we're all each individuals, and we're going to resonate with one sentiment or another. And if we don't have the right watering, then we may go to Brahma Sayuja. We don't have the watering of bhakti, we may go there. But it's very clear from Sanatana Goswami, Balaji Vijayabhusan, Jiva Goswami, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that Brahma Sayuja is an incomplete form of liberation. Everything about yourself is not known there. It's not found out by that. Because you haven't watered it. You haven't got that kind of influence to correspond with what you're about as a servant of Krishna. So the argument is that the Swarupa of Prabhupada is inherent in Prabhupada. Why is he in touch with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? Well, is there a place for a broad campaign of Krishna consciousness in Bhaktisiddhanta's movement? Certainly there is. So would it be appropriate for someone who was influenced by Nityananda Prabhu to play that role? Certainly there would be. Why isn't Nityananda Prabhu in Madhurya Rasa? He worships Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? I mean, so, yeah, I mean, those are not, those type of arguments, they can be answered in any number of ways, but as I said earlier, they don't outweigh the pramana of Prabhupada. You have to look at it the other way. Well, Prabhupada said this, so that's a fact. And he said it again and again and again, and you can read it in Oh My Friend. Then you have to look at any evidence that looks to the contrary from that point of view, not the other way around. But what about this? No, Prabhupada said this about himself. That is the final, pramana. There's no stronger pramana than that. So I hope I've addressed the question a little bit. The two questions, a little bit. Certainly, Prabhupada is serving his Prabhupada intimately in Vrindavan. That doesn't mean he has to be a Manjari to do that, right? That's not necessary. And secondly, why? What was it? If his guru's in Manjari Bhav, how can he not be in Manjari? Well, there are a number of so many examples. In the Sampradaya, Rup Sanatana spent the whole night trying to convince Anupam, their brother, that Madhurya Rasa was the best, but he couldn't give up Ramchandra. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard about it and said, "That's great." Like that. Glorious is that devotee who won't give up his Lord, and glorious is the Lord who won't let go of his devotee.
Amiyat Das says, "Thank you, Maharaj. He's satisfied with your answer."
Well, I could do better. I'm sorry I didn't do enough, but hopefully we can meet sometime personally and discuss it at length. It's a very interesting topic.
He's in New Zealand, so you'll need to meet him when you come here.
Okay, another reason. Under, right.
The pastime that you recounted of Shyamananda Pandit, formerly Hridoy Chaitanya Das, it's a fascinating pastime to me in that it speaks to the second part of Amiyatma Prabhu's question. Surely he's also serving him intimately in his Swarup as he is in his Sadhaka Rupa, because in that pastime we see this Prakat Leela, the manifested Leela of these sadhakas in the visible world, and then there's this like uppercut Leela that Shyamananda is participating in, and there's like the thinning of the veil between the two, and we see what happens with the Hridoy Chaitanya comes to Vrindavan and says, he's taken reinitiation and changed his name, which is where we started this conversation. And it was a controversy. And there was like an internal reality that was taking place. And then there was the externally visible reality. And by some X-ray vision, we're given the ability to see the internal reality of what was happening. But we can imagine, and it's pretty clear from the story, that what people who were there around him at the time saw was what was externally communicated, that, he's taken reinitiation, he's changed his name, but there was this Swarup reality taking place at the same time. And when I think about that, it reminds me of Baladev Vidyabhushan writing the Govinda Bhashya, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur declines the invitation. And he says, well, you're telling me the Ramanandi Brahmanas have taken Radha from the temple, but what's really going on is that, Krishna and Radha have had an argument, and she's had her manjaris, run off with her into the forest, and look, I don't want to get involved. So there's what's visible on the eyeballs of the human body, and then there seems to be this higher reality that's taking place right now that we're actually participating in without knowing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, in relation to the story of Shyamananda, what happened, of course, is that Hridaya Chaitanya questioned the activities of his disciple, but his disciple, Duki Krishnadas, who was now being known as Shyamananda, went into a trance. In the trance, he entered into Krishna Lila, and Subal said, "Tell Hridaya Chaitanya this." And it was something that only Hridaya Chaitanya knew from Subal himself. No one else could. Subal had told Hridaya Chaitanya, who was Subal was the guru, and in the form of Gauridas Pandit. Gauridas Pandit had passed away at this time. So he actually entered the Leela, and Subal said, "Tell him this." So he went there in his Manjari form, and he got the service of Subal. And Subal said, "Tell him this," right? So he went back and told Hridaya Chaitanya this, and then Hridaya Chaitanya could understand, well, he's in a very advanced devotee. He's entered into the Leela. Nobody could know that except myself and Gauridas Pandit or Subal. But it is an example that he went into the Leela in his Manjari Vaish, or Manjari dress, and he had some particular relationship with Subal. There's a beautiful verse in that regard I should mention, in Rupa Goswami's, one of Rupa Goswami's Leela Granthas, poem book, where he says, "My dear," I'll give it in English, basically paraphrasing, he makes a prayer to Subal. Radha and Krishna, and this is in Manjari Bhav, he's praying in Manjari Bhav. He says, "Oh Subal, you are very intimate, the most intimate associate of Radha and Krishna. When Radha's man, or anger with Krishna, loving anger, is so strong that no one can break it, only you can break it. Such is your position. You know them both intimately. Please be kind to this soul." Rupa Goswami is praying in Manjari Bhav as a sadhaka in Bhav Bhakti. Make a case to them for me. So it's an instance of someone in Manjari Bhav praying to Subal to help them attain this ideal. So it's a little opposite, but Prabhupada could very well is in Sakya Bhav. Even though his guru is in Madhurya Bhav, some of Prabhupada's disciples, our godbrothers, reasoned that Prabhupada is in sakya-rasa. He was born in the sakya-rasa community and family. Their patron saint of their family was Udarandata Thakur, who was one of the Dwadasa Gopals, one of the most intimate associate of Nityananda Prabhu, and the most magnanimous associate of Nityananda Prabhu. And Prabhupada used to make a pilgrimage every year with his family to the place of Udarandata Thakur. Prabhupada wrote a letter also, and that letter is available, to the Mahant of that Udarandata Thakur's place. And he wanted to know what it would take to buy enough land to secure the food grains perpetually for Udarandata Thakur's temple. So Prabhupada had an intimate relationship with this. When he was born in this whole community from the Saptagram community that was the preoccupation of Nityananda Prabhu in Bengal, where the whole sampradaya started. Prabhupada said by the time the British made their capital, Calcutta, half the city was populated by the Days and the Mullaks. These were all people from Saptagram, all of whom were a mercantile community that were nominally Vaishnavas, but had been excommunicated kind of from the social religious system of Varnashram. And Nityananda Prabhu went and lifted them up and gave them one ritual, Nam Sankirtan, for man, woman, and child, all to get together and so forth, and made their Vaishnavism more than nominal, and this is a huge Sakya-rasa community developed. Well, Prabhupada was born in that community, in that Sakya-rasa community. So, the godbrothers of Prabhupada knew about this, and for that and other reasons, establishing Krishna Balaram in the center, You can say, well, it's because he got property in Ramanreti, which is a place where Krishna and Balaram used to play in the sands. But why did he have that property donated to him in Ramanreti?
Mhm.
Why did that happen? Behind that? What was Ramanreti? When Prabhupada got Ramanreti, it was in the forest. We used to, there were no shops around in those days when we went there in the beginning. You had to take a rickshaw into town and to buy anything. It was a distance. It was thought to be a dangerous place. But Prabhupada took it happily and built his Krishna Balaram temple. So anyway, a number of the godbrothers of Prabhupada reasoned that Prabhupada was in sakya-rasa, but he got initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to bring out the Madhurya influence of a Narmasaka, a Priya Narmasaka. And in his prayer on the Jaladuta that we referred to in the beginning, it's the prayer of Narmasaka. Prabhupada is giving, he says, oh, my dear friend, Krishna, brother, listen, brother. He said, hey, listen, bro. This is how he's talking to Krishna. I've got some advice for you. Listen, I want to give you some moral counsel, okay? That if you want your life to be dharmic and successful and religious and righteous, then you need to please Radharani. And that is about as sure as the pole star, stays still. Dhruva bolito matai. Dhruva. So this is a sure. This cannot be changed. This is forever a fact. If you want to be, basically, if you want to be happy in life, you have to please Radharani. This is the way Subal will talk to Krishna. And you don't think Krishna got Krishna's ear? Krishna says, you know that about me. What do you want? What are you saying? And so then he goes on. He says, look, my guru is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He's a Manjari. He's in Radharani's camp. And she, through him, wants me to do this impossible task, preach in the Western world. I don't know how to do it. I need the power to do it. You have to give me the power. That's what I'm bargaining with you. Well, that was a very charming way to approach him. He surely got Krishna's attention. And let's pause for a moment. Do you think Krishna agreed to give him the power? Not only did he agree, he gave him the power of Nityananda Prabhu. He gave it in a big way. And such a big campaign came about. How can we reason otherwise, right? Yes.
When I started reading your book, so these are the three things I have written here. You have the first one was a question about inheriting your spiritual father's title, Bhaktivedanta.
Yeah.
The next one is the book is a treatise on sakya-rasa, culminating in Leela Smarana for sakya-rasa. And the next thing is everything that happened from 1966 onwards, including this conversation, is the expanded commentary on the song that Srila Prabhupada wrote on the Jaladuta.
Yeah, it's true, actually.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Krishna Shakti Vinay Tarapavar. You can't do that kind of work that he did that everyone's so acquainted with, and we never tire of speaking about his campaign unless you're empowered by Krishna Shakti. So then we look and see what's underneath there. What's the power? Where did it come from? This is where it came from. On the boat at that time. That's where it came from. And when it came, there can be no doubt about it. What Prabhupada did, I mean, it's just a chapter in Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism that will forever be, enshrined, if you will, ever be remembered. There will be others, and they will be memorable, and they will be wonderful. They have their own unique features and so forth. But this is one that forever stands out, and especially it stands out because it's so magnanimous. It's so Nityananda-esque. I mean, just reaching to the downtrodden, making it as simple as possible. You have this big fellow Nityananda Prabhu who's very extraordinary, and he's begging you, falling down at your feet, asking you to chant the names of Krishna, the names of Gaur. I mean, my goodness, that's embarrassing. So we're touched by that, obviously. So naturally, we think it's the best, the compassionate side of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But the compassion, that's only really the beginning of what this is all about. If you want to enter into bhakti rasa, you have to become compassionate. You have to pass through universal compassion, which means you have to let go of your biases. That's a big topic, but
yeah. I have a question. I guess it's two questions here. One, the soul takes birth and it's just going, lifetimes and after lifetimes and after lifetimes.
Yeah.
And because we come from Krishna ourselves, we're just part and parcel of Krishna. Does that mean that we already went or feel or enjoy or live that experience of different rasas? The second question is,
when we're passing through the world and we feel and so forth, are we tasting rasas? Is that your question?
no, so we are souls, we are part and parcel of Krishna, is that right?
Right, right.
And then we are immortal, we're just being like, in this lifetime, going from lifetime to a lifetime, forgetting about what we done in the previous lifetimes. As a souls, how we already experience different type of rasas. This is one of the questions.
Okay, why don't you treat them one after the other? Or are they related?
Yeah. Now, if we are taking birth in this lifetime, for example, for me in this lifetime, is that already inherent in myself what kind of rasa I'm going to live?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's this. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur describes the eternal liberated associates of Krishna as anadi siddha samskars. They have, without a beginning, impressions for bhakti that are perfect. Typically, we think of a samskar as an impression, which is an English translation, which means it would come from somewhere else and be impressed upon us. But he refers to the status of the eternal associates of Krishna as anadi, beginningless, without a beginning, siddha samskars for Krishna, of impressions. So they have no beginning. They weren't impressed upon them, but he calls them samskars. So reasoning along those lines, as I have explained earlier, there can be impressions, like the impression inside the acorn, for each jiva. How does Krishna, Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, so there's nothing he does that's not for his own, for enjoyment, for pleasure, right? Of course, his pleasure entirely derives from the pleasure of his devotees, but sharing devotion or the opportunity for devotion would be related to that. Through the Paramatma, he expands jivas to have a relationship with them. The jivas are said to expand from Paramatma that they might have a way to meet their maker. And so you can reason that there's a way in which Krishna desires to accept service from every jiva. And each jiva will discover what that way is. And it will be discovered through association. And typically it will get the kind of association in due course that will bring that out. So in that sense, there's a rasa to be experienced. That's latent. That's Bhaktivinoda used the term dormant. There's maybe 20, 30 times in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishnadas used the term arises, awakens, with regard to the perfection that you will attain. So you're not a blank slate, is the point, right? So you have, you have a spiritual destiny in the context of being a servant of Krishna. And because you're attracted to Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism, it's reasonable to conclude, for the most part, that your ideal lies within Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism, and the principal windows through which Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism offers us help to nourish and bring that out are sakya-rasa and madhurya-rasa. Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism is deep, but it's also broad. So we should also mention that some people will be caught up by Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism who have a destiny that is other than Braj Prem. I have at least one godbrother who, for example, found himself to be attracted to Ramanuja Sampradaya and the ideal of love and reverence, although he was brought in entirely by Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism. So Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Mahamantra, they're both deep and broad. You can find people in South India chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 24 hours a day, but they think of the Ram as Ramchandra, Krishna is Krishna, Hare is the name of Hari. And you get deep in Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism, and they'll say, oh, the Ram is a name for Krishna, and Hari is a name for Radha. Hare is a name for Radha in the vocative. So they're deeper and broader, deep and broad sides. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Yuga avatar. He comes at the time of the Yuga avatar, but he comes for a special purpose of his own. And so he combines the wide circulation with Braj Prem, and he picks up the Braj Prem devotees, but other devotees will be picked up too. And then they may find themselves attracted to other sadhus and so forth that correspond with their ideal. No harm. But I think that for yourself, you have a destiny in Braj Prem. Now you have to do sadhana. You have to read my book and others and see, and associate with sadhus and see what is Manjari Bhav, what is Sakya Bhav, what is Dharma Sakya Bhav, what are these, what do they really mean? What do they? Then you find some attraction for one or the other, and then you go for it. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, questioning myself, like, okay, so what is my what is the type of relationship that I need to have in this lifetime, and in my next lifetime, whatever I am, will I have the same relationship that I do?
Claro.
Depends, or does it change to parental, or you know, all these classes, like
Lo mismo. Seguro. Sí. No, it would be the same, of course, yes. Because you're awakening a bhava that's a sthayi bhava, dominance, a self-defining emotion. So, yeah, that doesn't change. So good. Yeah. I should mention in this regard that Jiva Goswami has written a book called Gopal Champu. It's probably his finest work in one sense. The Sandarbhas, of course, are extraordinary. They're philosophical, but Gopal Champu is a retelling of the manifest Leela from the vantage point of the uppercut Leela. And that's significant in and of itself. But at the end of the book, and he has very much showcased Vatsalya-rasa, sakya-rasa, and madhurya-rasa. At the end of the book, he says, so read this book. I've shown each of these. I've shown them all. Which one you're attracted to? Go for that. Use that, what I've written about here, to help you go there. So this is the same thing the Bhagavatam's inviting us to do. It's introducing us to the Braj Prem, and if we have some affinity for that, then it'll catch on. So that which attracts you in this life, that will you be attracted to that much more in the next life. It'll become more apparent. Just like I have disciples, I know, oh, he's in sakya-rasa. I have some, I say, oh, I can see he's in madhurya-rasa. I can see, oh, hasn't figured this, he hasn't had first-time experience, basically, in a human life. Interested in it. Others, like me, I hit the ground running. That's just a fact. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. We're all flowers in the garden. Some bloom early, some bloom later, right? But I hit the ground running. I met Prabhupada, first time I saw Prabhupada, I wept, tears shot out of my eyes, like I've never experienced before, just seeing him. And he looked at me for a long 5 seconds, and I thought, I've met my eternal friend. And that's what I felt. So not everybody felt like that. Some people had a more close, intimate relationship with Prabhupada than I did. For sure, some had a more distant relationship. And some who had a more distant relationship have made more spiritual progress than some who were close to him. That's another point to make. That also happens. But we're all, in this forever, so we might as well get used to one another. We try to get used to one another. Be generous with one another. That's important. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very generous. And a book like mine, I mean, it's a deep book. It really is a deep book, but it has its place. And if you read it, I think it will help many devotees to become more focused on what this Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇavism is all about, how compelling it is, how charming it is, how endearing it is, how current and vital it is, and we, help us to become a little more one-minded about our our practice, which is required, and it's hard to do in today's world. We're bombarded with so much information and misinformation, disinformation. It's better to turn off the radio or whatever it is, the computer, and read Circle of Friends. Enter there. Then there will be no more questions. There'll be no answers. There's no questions. There's no answers. There's just knowing, being, and to know him is to love him. So
It's a fantastic place to land the conversation.
okay.
So beautiful when you said not more knowing.
Yeah.
Just being. It's like, wow. That's so beautiful. Like,
Jnana
you know,
Shunya Bhakti.
In my lifetime, it's just like it's more about knowing, like, how do we do this? How do I do this? How do I do that? But the being is like that experience of like just be in, like the presence, the connection.
Yeah. And there's something said for the adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So you got to serve advanced Vaishnavism. And so anyway, very nice to be with both of you and all of you and all the whole audience, and books available. I hope you take advantage of it, and I make myself available also, incidentally, every week for questions on Sundays at 8:30 in the morning, California time. Anyone who's interested in that can contact someone, I guess maybe Gurnishta, who's publishing information about my book, and connect you with that if you want to. And
is there somewhere people can go to get a link to that, or
California time?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Some of my students are organizing that.
Okay.
But
it's all about who you know.
I can send it to you, and maybe you can put it in the thing.
Exactly. That way people can find it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But I have a sangha, Chishis and a sangha. It's more like me. I have my thoughts and I share them. I'm not a big organizer of many projects and so forth, but I write. I've written quite a few books, and I like to share my thoughts with people who like them. If people don't like them, it doesn't bother me. That's fine. I can understand why some might not. But my sangha involves anyone who likes my thoughts, resonates with them, and would like to discuss them. That's my group. Right? Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Sure. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, Maharaj, I acknowledge your contribution to Gauḍīya Vaiṣṇava Siddhanta and the Sampradaya. Yeah. Thank you.
Hari.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I'm going to roll the credits, and if you could just stick around for a minute, I'd just like to speak with you briefly once we finish the stream.
Sure.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in. This conversation with Maharaj. Get his book, Circle of Friends, from Darshan Press, and we'll publish the how to get on Maharaj's weekly questions in the comments on Facebook and YouTube, so you can check that out, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Hare Krishna.
End the stream.